Baker, and Mass Department of Highway Administration John Gulliver, Representative Denise Garlick, Senator Mike Rush. We have a representative from Senator Ross's office, Tan Matthews, the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, and local, state, and officials here, and representatives of the Mansion H. Carter Post, BFW 2498, and of course, the lady of the day, James Delaney. I also want to acknowledge that while Congressman Kennedy was unable to be here today, his outreach director, Stephanie Nogru, is present, and an Eagle Scout from Needham, Sam Weissman, will share a letter from Congressman Kennedy's later in the program. Welcome to everybody to the ceremony today, the designation of the Kendrick Street Bridge to be dedicated to James J. Delaney, Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, retired. Jim was a longtime Needham resident, and he was my very good friend. I trucked him all over the place. All right. He participated, and when you look at some of the things that have been written about him, a lot's left out. He was on Macon Island with the Raiders. He was Jimmy Roosevelt's bodyguard. Big deal. No, very big deal. He was on Guam. He was on Tarawa. He was on Iwo Jima. He was on Okinawa. And he was recalled to go to Korea. He only got shot 5 times. And I asked him, because we would exchange stories and reminiscence about the Marine Corps. Jim, didn't you take the ducking course at Paris Island? He got shot like 4 times in one leg. 2 of them never really healed, which was problematic because he got older. But he was a wonderful guy. He was a gentleman. He was also a vagabond during the Depression. He joined the Marine Corps. He was in the CCC. He was smarter than the older guys. He joined the Marine Corps, went to Macon Island. He was an illegal enlistment. He got bounced. He was back 6 months later with 5 more guys from East Somerville and back to the war. Had to get there before it was over. And everybody in those days thought, you know, boom, bang, done. You know, we'll have this thing done by Christmas. It didn't happen. So he was there the whole time. He had a Navy Commendation Medal, 2 Asian Combat Stars, the Korean War Medal. He was a hero. He was a Marine. And the one conclusion we came to in all this, I served 26 years. He served about 12. We did what we had to do to survive. And that was the thing. And we didn't think anything of it. You know, I have these ribbons, and these medals. Right place, wrong time, wrong place, right time. I don't know why. But you spend a little time, that's what happens. The same thing with Jim. Now, if we went down to Needham Cemetery, his grave's probably flipping and flopping over us doing this. Because he was a very quiet, private man. And he was a gentleman in every sense of the word. How many people can be talked about like that? He really was. And the best red guy you ever met. Anyway, enough about Delaney. We'll now have the presentation of colors and the national anthem, sung by Miss Lily Ramos of the Pollard Middle School, a cappella.
Gave proof through
Thank you very much. We'll now have an invocation by Tom Keating, the chaplain for Manson H. Carter Post, PFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars, Post 2498. Chaplain.
Uncover. Dear God, we are assembled here today to dedicate this bridge in honor of our dear departed comrade, James Delaney, our friend and fellow veteran who served his country as a U.S. Marine in World War II and in Korea. Let this bridge always remind us of Jim and the bridges of friendship he built with everyone he met, especially veterans. We thank you, Lord, for having James Delaney in our lives. Amen. Now, I would like to introduce to you Dan Matthews, the chairman of the Needham Board of Selectmen.
Cover.
Thank you. I'm fortunate to be able to say that Jim Delaney was a friend for more than 30 years. He was known by his identities, as you know. He was a Marine for life. And Bill has told you something of his service, including wounded at Iwo Jima and going back to Korea to serve and be wounded again. Jim Delaney was a Kennedy man and proud of it. He was with Jack Kennedy at the White House. He was with Ted, and he was with Bobby in California 50 years ago, a week from today, on one of the saddest days of his life. But through it all, he was tremendously loyal, and when young Joe, as we call him, I guess at my age, Joe the Third, said he'd like to try running for Congress to represent our town and the communities around here, Jim was one of the first to step forward. He was also an inveterate storyteller. I can recall sitting with him literally for hours, and he would talk about one fascinating thing after another. Forrest Gump had nothing on this man. And as far as I know, they were all true, and he never told the same one twice. In March of 1953, Jim was on a hospital ship, having been wounded in Korea, and in the next bunk or bed was Ted Williams. Now, if you're from Boston, you know that Ted Williams was one of the best baseball players of all time, and not much of a people person. And Ted was having a real problem because he was wounded and he was sick. And he had been pretty unpleasant to all of the people whose job it was to try to care for him. Not much of a baseball player, was a great people person, and he helped mend those fences and create a lifetime friendship with Ted Williams. Jim, and that's just one of those stories. In 1,000 ways, Jim Delaney was an exemplar of a generation. But who is? He was a man of courage, thoughtful, loyal, hardworking, principled, a friend to me, a friend to our town, and a friend to our country. And I want to thank you for coming here today and just say again that it is a privilege for me to be part of this designation, to remember Jim's and honor his name with yet another bridge that I think is exactly the kind of bridge that he built throughout his life. And I'd like now to introduce, fresh from his most recent travels, Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for being here today to honor Sergeant Jim Delaney. You know, as a Highway Division Administrator, one of the things that we do frequently is build new bridges, build new roadways and such, but I got to tell you that doing these bridge dedications is really one of the most rewarding parts of the job. Coming in and seeing how much it means to families, how much it means to communities, and learning of the local heroes in Massachusetts that really helped make our great state what it is today, and also dedicated their life in the service of their country, and really what makes these communities so special. Sergeant Delaney more than fits this description, and this new bridge provides a critical link for vehicles, pedestrians, and cyclists, and it will now provide a critical link to our heritage with the lasting remembrance of a decorated veteran. Before I introduce our next speaker, we'd like to have the bagpipes come up and call on men.
Call the piper!
Well, I also have the honor of working for another tireless public servant that, even with an incredibly busy schedule, always makes himself available to veterans and the events that honor them. He's a tireless advocate for veterans, their families, and recognizes many of the sacrifices that are made in service to our Commonwealth and to our country. Ladies and gentlemen, our Governor, Charlie Baker.
Good afternoon, everybody. And Helen, let me just start by congratulating you on this very special day for you and Jim and your family. And I also want to make sure to introduce our Veterans Affairs Secretary, Francisco Urani, USMC. That's right. And I'll just say briefly that one of the things that's not a partisan issue here in Massachusetts is the way we deal with, support, and honor our veterans. That is an issue where Massachusetts takes second place to no one. We are number one in the country across almost every measure you can think of with respect to our support for our men and women in uniform, and that's something I know that Senator Rush and the Secretary and the members of the House and the Senate, our administration, are very proud of and take very seriously. And to the men and women who are here today who served in our nation's military, I just want to, on behalf of the Commonwealth, say thank you to all of you for your service. And I especially want to say how much I appreciate the fact that this particular event is happening shortly after we all celebrate, honor. The Secretary and I were at exactly this time in Western Mass at the Massachusetts Veterans Memorial Cemetery as part of a ceremony we had there to honor those who paid the price for the rest of us. And I think it was about 42 degrees out. Monuments literally would start in the Civil War and go all the way up to the War on Terror and run from one end of the street to the other. And my kids used to say, so what, help us understand why we're doing this. What's this all about? Why are all of these monuments right in front of our house? And then why are all the squares named after somebody and all the bridges and all the rest? And we thought about how to explain that to a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old. And we landed on, it's to remind us all that the price we pay for freedom isn't small. And in fact, it's big, and it's paid for by the men and women on those monuments and those memorials and whom those squares are named after, and their families who gave us the opportunity to participate in this glorious thing we call democracy. And you, my children, should never forget that. Because it's a high price, and it can really, truly never be repaid. And the best that we can do is to make sure we honor and remember and never forget and respect the service and the sacrifice that was made by so many to give us this chance to be part of this great country. And while I think about this a lot, I especially think about it this time of year. And what I really think about is the fact that no one ever asked any of those folks, although I'm guessing Delaney was a Democrat, about what their party affiliation was. Who cares? They're Americans. And they were serving to protect our freedoms and provide those at home and those who came after them with a chance and an opportunity to participate in a country where it's okay to have more than one opinion. Well, I listen to a lot of what passes these days for political dialogue. I wonder and worry sometimes if we aren't letting those people down, that they would expect more from us. If you take one message away from me today, it's this one. Jim Delaney, like so many others, was an American hero who preserved and protected our rights and our freedoms and our opportunities to participate fully in this great thing we call democracy. And to truly respect and honor and remember and praise those who chose to serve and those who paid the price, we should retreat and remember that democracy is a conversation and a debate. It's continual, it goes on, and points of view are supposed to be debated and discussed with respect and dignity. And I'm sure that's exactly how Jim would have wanted it. And I love the fact that this is here in my hometown of Needham. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Next, I'd like to call up Secretary Arena to say a few words. He's been spending, I know, a very busy weekend and goes around the state on a daily basis to meet with veterans, and I know he got to know Mr. Delaney.
Thank you, Administrator Gullivan, and good afternoon to each and every one of you, all to Governor Baker and Senator Rush, ladies and gentlemen, and Helen. Thank you to all of the Marines, friends, and veterans of Jim. What can be said about Jim? He was a veterans and a Marines Marine. I miss his calls. I miss the ones that he would call you, say that I miss your call, and then he would call and we would have a conversation for an hour. But that was who Jim was, and I miss those days, because what great sense of tutelage he provided so many of us. And I think that could be said by every veteran that he recruited to the Needham post. I live in East Boston. I'm wearing the Needham hat today, the cover, because Jim wanted me to join this post after so long. So many years he was courting me in a sense. Francisco, when are you going to join? When are you going to join? Finally I joined, and one of the members said, but when are you going to attend the meetings? And Jim said, it doesn't matter. We just want him to be part of our family. And I think that's what Jim did for so many. You know, Iwo Jima and Okinawa weren't easy battles. Today we revere those survivors of both of those battles. And every year at the State House, there's an opportunity to honor the survivors that are still among us. And for several decades now, the numbers have been dwindling. We're now down to 4 usuals. But it wasn't until a few years ago that I remember Jim was so proud of that ceremony, so proud to be sharing those stories. And I've never seen a walker being pushed so fast like Jim pushed in his red, memorable tanker's jacket. Jim set a great legacy for us all as veterans, but as residents of this proud Commonwealth. And this bridge, to all the passers-byers, you know, at the end of the day, there'll be a name of Jim Delaney Memorial Bridge. But it is up to each and every one of us to tell people who Jim was and what his stories mean and the reasons why he's being honored. May God bless each and every one of you all. And in the ways he always finishes phone calls, Semper Fi, which means always faithful. And today we're being faithful to Jim and to all those who wore the uniform of our great nation. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you, Secretary. Our next speaker is not only a state senator, but is an Iraqi war veteran, having served in Operation New Dawn, and he's a lieutenant colonel in the United States Navy. It is my privilege to introduce the Senate Chairman of the Committee on Veterans and Federal Affairs, Senator Mike Rush.
Thank you so much. It is indeed an honor and a privilege to be here with you today. And there's just a few folks I want to specifically thank. As you can see, these events just don't happen. It's a team effort. That's how these things happen. Although I can't stop laughing because I'm a member of the Needham Post too, and I live in West Roxbury. And it's for the exact same reason. Jim Delaney said you have to join the Post. But I want to thank Bill Topman, Tom Keating, Matt Chin, all the members of the Needham VFW, Selectman Handel, Selectman Matthews, Selectman Borelli, Kate Fitzpatrick, my colleague in the state Senate who was unable to be here today, Senator Richard Ross, and we were able to get this bill through the Senate end of it. I want to thank Donnie Daly and the entire staff from MassDOT. They are absolutely outstanding. Thank you for all that you do. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate it. I want to thank my colleague in government and my friend, and she is, for those of you who don't know, she is the heart and soul of the Needham community, each and every day fighting for veterans and fighting for the people of this town, and that is our dear friend, Representative Denise Garlick. I want to thank Secretary Urena specifically for the work he does each and every day, and as the governor mentioned, we do this together. We put veterans first. We work for them, with their families, to ensure that Massachusetts is, out of all 50 states, #1, and we don't take it for granted, and we continue to work hard at it. So, Governor, I thank you, and Secretary, you, for all the work that you do with us working together. So thank you. I really appreciate that. And, of course, Helen, this is just absolutely fantastic, and I think back to the many, many conversations I had with Jim and how the fondness he would talk about you and his love for you. I remember in particular, we all have a million stories, but I do remember once I picked up half of the town of Needham in redistricting, getting many calls from Jim, and he told me, oh, you're going to be taking me out for breakfast on Wednesday morning. So I said, well, okay, I'll be there. So he said, no. But we have a million stories about Jim, and this bridge is a symbol of him as a person, his dedication, his love of you, Helen, his love of this community, his love of country. And as long as this bridge will be here, we'll remember, from whether it's the halls of Montezuma or the shores of Tripoli, Jim Delaney and his legacy will live on in our hearts and in this community forever. Thank you so much.